I've seen the dynamic of CSI and the different partnerships inside. How would you describe CSI as a group?
I mean, the first word that comes to mind probably would be a family. I think it is, we were just discussing that of the sort of business representatives, of the guys that you see here, directors or whatever you'd call them, not one of them came through a formal job application. You know, God's kind of brought people to us. And so there's always a sort of a unique link, a God link in there, and hence.
If I can interject there, if you take Tians at PowerZone, his wife was two of our children's teachers. She's a pre-primary school teacher. So I got to know her because she taught one child and then 2 years later the next child. And I went to school one day and she was in the passage crying. And we'd become friends. I asked her, why are you crying? They're strong Christians. She said, you know what, we can't pay our mortgage, and I haven't paid our mortgage for 2 months. And I said, why? And she said, well, Tians left the ministry. He was a minister in the church, and he went into real estate, but it's just not working, and we haven't got enough money. And I said, don't worry, tell him to go and see Gary. Gary will help him. That's the only thing that came to me. I said, don't worry. And I left it and I phoned Gary and I said, Gary, there's Elsa. He knew Elsa, but just from school. Her husband's coming and they really need money, so there must be something he can do. Just employ him for a while at least. And so Tians came on board like that. And we didn't know what to do with him really. He was a real estate agent. And previously that a church minister. So we got him to do a project helping us move location.
Well, actually what happened was just shortly after we had got him on board, we were renting a premises at that stage, and the premises had changed owners, and the new owners wanted the area that we were renting, and so they really kind of forced us out. And God led us to the premises we're in now, and we subsequently purchased that. But it was great because we were kind of in contracts and we had a lot going on.
Gary and Tim were really busy.
And so he ran this whole move.
Because it was the moving of large equipment, cleaning up the factory where all the large equipment had been. There was a huge project.
I think it was 17 32-ton trucks. Wow. So it was a large move. So
but he just did the whole thing.
Really well.
He did so well, and that's where it began. And then from there, when the solar came on board, he was quite passionate about that, so he's gone with that. I think that, we've got a family to support and things behind us. But I was thinking that's such an important combination because, as Brett was saying, if you want to look for miracles in business, you actually have to take some risk to see the miracle. I mean, you don't get miracles doing the safe stuff. So you need Gary to be risky and to take risks. But in the past, there has been times when I've had to say, I think slow down a bit, let's talk about it, let's get some advice. And so that's how it works for us, I think.
No, works really well. No.
But it's quite hard to take the role as the wife sometimes because you are very much in the background, especially like I did a lot of work in the corporate world and then decided to have a family. So my role is very much the mother and wife. And it's hard sometimes to give advice and know that it's not being taken. But then it's also really satisfying when you are standing back and seeing the progress and realizing that, you have contributed and you do have a role.
It's probably more effective than actually having a resume role, right? When you see just your heart and your thoughts being played out.
I thought, we can't just raise 75,000 Rand. Where on earth are we going to get 75,000 Rand from? But we really trusted. And we prayed like mad because it really was serious that we paid this amount of money. And a God-placed miracle happened. A tax payment that shouldn't have come. Was it a tax payment? No, it was a company that was due to pay us. We knew the money would come in. They messed up their accounts and they paid us before they should have.
Actually weren't due to pay us. They were only due to pay us in 2 months' time, but they paid.
They messed up their accounts and they paid us early. And that was fine. It just meant that our cash flow worked and we could go ahead with it. But I can remember thinking, 80,000 Rand. How on earth are we going to find 80,000 Rand? And now, when you look at CSI, we have to have the same level of faith, but the figures are tenfold that. So for me, I think there's been an enormous growth from that in company terms. yet it's the same amount of faith you need, and the same amount of desperation.
And I think it really has the same feeling in it. It still really feels like a kind of a family business, if you want, in a good way. But yeah, it has. There's a fundamental thread, that kingdom thread that's running through it. I think that influences every business, every person that God brings into the business. And we frequently get comments from visitors that walk in, Christians, non-Christians, that when they come into CSI, they're sometimes not sure why, but there's this incredible feeling when they walk into CSI or come into our premises. We've worked with consultants that some have, some haven't been Christians, but when they leave, we have, and we don't really see that. We know that we still have a lot to tidy up and clean up and sort out within the entity, within the company, or companies. But clearly, from an outside perspective, there's a God element there.
And is it part of the reason why you've invited Reed back, kind of for the second round?
Can I start off?
I started last time.
So the interesting thing is that I didn't really set out or intend to build a group of companies, or the way it looks like it's going, a few groups of companies.
Maybe we should interject there. When coming back to what you said before, CSI was purely only a mining supply company 10 years ago. Now we are in two completely different fields, one being in the solar industry and one being in the mining industry, with different companies under those two sections.
So I guess that because of the way it's gone, for us now in terms of the season going forward, is we're being more purposeful around what God wants us to do so we looked at it, or God gave us a picture of a chest of drawers a while ago when we were grappling with the structure. And so now we're being a little bit more purposeful about the chest, and what is the chest, and what are our foundational principles that are important in this chest. And then in terms of, was it motivation to bring Reed back? Not really, because actually I was not intending to sit as a separate entity with Lowell. And one of my questions to Brett when he arrived was, how am I going to do this? Because, I need to be at every table in this visioning session or whatever it is. So how am I going to do this? And then when I told him the story of the chest, kind of a vision that was given to us recently, then he said, well, why don't you rather do it separately? So it wasn't part of the motivation to get Repache again. What was part of the motivation was from a sort of a performance management perspective. We have a lot of secular material, and a lot of the kingdom business material that one finds is a little bit iffy, a little bit pie in the sky, if you want. Not really practical management tools. And this, to me, is something that I wanted to integrate with, add a bit of budgeting and a few other aspects of it, and we have a really practical kingdom management tool. And so getting all the entities and all the guys on the same page and really understanding this and getting them inspired through this is really what prompted us to run this again.
So if God said, okay, I'm here, in this atmosphere, and whatever your heart's desire is from this workshop, what would that look like? you and for each of the companies that are being consulted this venture?
Great. Can I bring you an answer tomorrow? Take a bit of thought. You know, one of the great things about this, and the fact that I'm sitting on a different table as what we're seeing now, is the guys that are running these entities. It's really their vision, and this is what's exciting me a lot about this as well.
That's true.
And so for us, I think understanding the chest and it's moving us a step sort of out of the picture, if you want, but really understanding more of what we want.
I think maybe I could add to that one of the things that has, even over the years, I mean, obviously the first Rep venture was done with just Tim and Gary, but as people have come into the company, like we said, there's still sometimes a feeling that Gary carries a lot of the responsibility. And I think if they can come away with the understanding that they are the stewards of this business that belongs to God, it's not Gary's business, it's not Gary's CSI group, it's actually God's, and they have been called by God to take their role. For us, I think that would make a big difference. If we actually, and I'm not saying that they haven't taken ownership, but I think coming out of Rep, they may have a better idea of how that ownership should play itself out. You know, and I think for me, if maybe because I'm the wife that sees the stress that sometimes Gary carries, it would be nice to see that shared. It's easy to say God owns the business.
Yeah.
It's another thing to actually work as if you believe God owns the business.
Right. When it really settles into the heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Whether you own it as in a shareholding, or whether you understand that you own it because God's called you there and it's God's business.
But I guess that's the real blessing for us, is to see. Years ago, in fact, several times, and during our first Equip venture, one of the prophetic words came to me that I would have many sons. And I have 3 daughters.
Physically, we have 3 daughters, and I'm not trying for any more.
If you truly are going to dedicate your business to God and trust Him with it, you have to spend the time in every area of your business seeking Him for what it is that He would want you to do in that business. And there is no other way that we do it, really, other than when we're presented with an opportunity like Reap or what Equip was.
You're almost forced to take a week out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And as Brett says, as it goes on, you realize that you've got to put aside your Blackberries and your frantic messages from your secretary.
And I mean, when I try to sell this to a lot of companies or a lot of people, the 2 most common responses are either I can't afford it or
I haven't got
I
time.
haven't got the time. and it's quite sad, really. Yeah, I mean,
because if you do it, you'll get more time and maybe more money.
This guy's like, I have all the money and time in the world.
Yeah.
We really can't stand before God and honor Him and say, this is your business, if we can't take 1 week out of 52. It really is quite sad. So, and I understand it is difficult. You know, when we did the first Reap venture, we had committed. The first Equip venture, we had committed to it, and about a month before the venture, we landed the biggest contract we ever had, and it was due to start the week of the venture.
And we so needed that contract. And it was just, at that stage, it was just Gary and Tim were the only managers, and they were both scheduled to go.
We really didn't know how we were going to do it. Yeah. So God, just to make sure that we took our minds off it, our factory revolved around this large overhead crane that was carrying these large 15-ton molds and product around. And he fixed it so the crane broke down, and the particular spares that were needed were not available in the country, and they were going to take sort of
a week, 10 days.
Yeah, they were going to take. In fact, it was 3 weeks initially was the quote to get this thing repaired. So we just resigned ourselves to this and just decided to trust God and follow the process. And I think it was on sort of it was just after a week that actually these spares arrived and this crane got fixed and we were able to get up and running again. And the way God worked, obviously there was no time lost in the contract.
So the week of downtime was tied in with the week of venture. So even if they hadn't gone on the venture, they wouldn't have been able to do anything anyhow.
Right.
So
no, it was a
God's
good
timing
thing.
is perfect.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think people need to put aside their excuses.